in French there's a word called a florilège, and it's a segment of different texts and information composed together. And this composing for me in this publication was important because it was also embracing my research itself. So the magazine was a way to have um, the texts that I'm talking about, the vocabulary itself, togetherness, collectivity, community, the link to architecture, the link to expanded scenography and scenography, of course, some essays about theater and my previous practices that were maybe closer to classical scenography as we can intend it, but also the red thread of my magazine, which is the vegetable garden that I worked in Utrecht, and the interviews of the people working there, the explanation of the development of my work there and of my research itself, because it was grounded where I was, which is in the Netherlands, right after / in COVID actually, in the societal, environmental and political urgency that we are living right now, that I'm calling a rupture in my book. I decided to root my research through a red thread, which was a vegetable garden, but most importantly, a shared vegetable garden. It was just at the outskirts of the center, so its urban context was also very interesting and important. And the urban context, the urgency of today's society, and the fact that it was a vegetable garden, a shared ground, and such an important matter in today's need for this community, gave to my story and to my scenography a lot of narration. And this was really one of the 3 poles of scenography for me: narration, public, and space. Those 3 poles were giving me 2 parallel works. One was a physical work in the vegetable garden itself that led to a scenography and to part of an exhibition that I took. And the other part was, of course, the written research and all the development around my research question, which was and which still is, how can space contribute to create a community out of a collectivity? And this research question, I still carry it today in my practice completely. But it started then at the time, and finding this vegetable garden was a way to really ground this question, but mostly give it a red thread. So this red thread idea is something that I carried in the publication, especially because I gave it the form of a magazine. And this was very important. The format of a magazine was for me a way to express this plurality of the different ways of being a collectivity throughout my work. So not only in the research itself, but also in the publication itself. Giving it a format of a magazine also allowed me to include as many people, as many voices as I wanted to, and as it was possible in this publication. I wanted to include female voices in different ways, different medium. So I collaborated with photographers. I interviewed women that I thought were interesting for the research. I followed through their life in this vegetable garden and their culture and the slowness of the seasons, of them evolving in their relation with me, but also with my research itself and with their vegetable garden. In my magazine, you can also discover 4 carte blanche, and those carte blanche are a way for me to give a page or 2 pages, some freedom, to 4 women artists who all have a very different practice, that are all linked to collectivity, sometimes womanhood, but not especially. The first carte blanche is Aina Roca. She's a fellow scenographer. Her work is really based on space itself. She also has a background in architecture, and I really wanted her to give her personal voice about my research question. Davida made a work about weaving community in her streets, but this weaving community, of course, was also about creating something with your hands, creating a community in a locally speaking environment. And so she really also represented actually questions that were similar to mine in a very different way than mine. So it was for me interesting to give her a voice as well. This is the last carte blanche, and I think it's a great synthesis of the rest of the carte blanches that are all women, and how are we linked together in the end, whether it is by water or by a vegetable garden and culture. So we have 4 interviews that's Rhythm, my magazine, of these different people that are part of this shared vegetable garden community collectivity. And it's always me who interviewed them with a photographer that I invited to get a trace of this moment together. So it's always a trio of the person being interviewed, myself, and a photographer. Sorry. I can use this slide to tell you more about my experience in the vegetable garden, which was really a figure of the urgency of my research and a very light way of abording such an important matter with the eyes of a scenographer, which I think can bring so much to such questions that are very actual, that are very urgent, and that are part of the rupture that we are living together. So the challenge for me was also, as an architect, how did I want to include this scenography in my work? And for me, it really goes about these 3 poles who allow in the end this expanded scenography to exist in a way that it did beautifully. Because I did work there, so it was also amazing to actually witness this collectivity becoming a community through the time that I was here in the spaces that I invested. And do you think that did I say enough about the collectivity and the community? Not yet. No, maybe something I want to say is it's also an object. Well, I don't know really how to explain it, but this magazine that I created, I did it with my hands completely. So what you're holding in your hands now, it's a self-made work. I binded it all. It's recycled paper only. There's a Rizzo print in there that I of course did myself, and you can still see some snippets. A lot of the photography that is not in the interviews I did myself, including one of the interviews. And yeah, all the handwork that goes into it, I did it myself. So it was also a self-involvement in that sense. And again, meeting people who actually taught me how to do it. So actually creating a small community out of the craft that went into this book. So yeah, this made it very important for me to compose all of this, like music, in this magazine that can host these interviews, these essays, the carte blanches of the artists that I invited, the collaborations that I had with photographers, with the people that I interviewed. And all of this was part of this research which was about collectivity, community, and the role of space and what space can do for it, what space can do to enhance it, and absolutely participate to its creation. This document and this publication is trace of my first attempt to get closer to the scenographical aspect of this question, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.